Welcome to Detour, the video podcast from design team of Make My Trip. As India's travel super app, Make My Trip helps millions of our users go places. Stay, experience, and explore the world around us. With Detour, we share what makes the design team tick, what excites us, inspires us, our challenges, learnings, and insights. So join us on this detour.
Hi, and welcome to the Detour. My name is Jay Datta, and I lead the design team for Make My Trip and Go Ibibo. Today's episode of Detour is all about user research, what we designers like to call UX research. Along with a few of my colleagues, I'm going to talk about how we started, built, and expanded the UX research team. We'll talk about the hurdles we faced, our blind spots, and how we managed to see our users from perspectives afresh. If you are looking to set up a user research team, or you are a UX researcher yourself, you'll find some useful ideas and fun takeaways in today's episode. So without further ado, let's take this detour. At Make My Trip and Go Ibibo, we have about 55 million people. That's a lot. People who use our website, our apps, our progressive website, so on, and of course services every month. For those number of users, the experience is the very core of our business. So you would assume that we have always had a large, diverse user research team. That's not true. Our dedicated UX research team is relatively new. When we had first proposed the idea of setting up a user research team a few years ago, the reaction was, well, we are paid heed to what users say, think, do through market studies and surveys, data analytics, feedback, complaint, usability studies occasionally, and so on. So then why do we need another user research team to do that? And actually, they were not wrong. They're pretty right. GoMMT's chairman, Deep Kalra, is well known to share user stories in every all hands reviews and town halls. He makes sure, like many in the L team or the leadership team, that they are in touch. But you know how organizations are when it comes to setting up new cost centers. They are worried. They're worried about us designers spending tons of money on random passion projects. So anyway, the user research proposal got on a slow track. A few months later, one of the management execs of the company called to say, Jay, why didn't you tell us you wanted to do a UT studies team? And my first reaction on hearing the word UT was, what, urinary tract? And thankfully I was wrong. The UT reference was to something called usability testing. That's usual parlance. Now suddenly I had a budget to conduct a lot more usability tests and even have a dedicated team for it. So with that budget, we ended up setting something much more than a UT focused team. We ended up setting the UX research team. Moral of the story, we designers love our design terms and jargons, but sometimes it's good to learn the language of management. If you speak their language, then maybe you can get them to do things that you want them to do. It's not easy, but you should try. With that little anecdote, let's jump into today's episode of The Detour. We have two very different perspectives on UX research. The first from freshly minted researchers and the other from seasoned practitioners. First up, Vidushi and Rupesh, both user researchers across MMT or Make My Trip and Go Ibibo. Both recently completed their studies from IIT Guwahati, and for both, this is their first year of a UX research job. So welcome Vidushi, welcome Rupesh. Shall we take this detour?
Sure. Great to be here.
Great. Vidushi, let me start with you. I believe animation and motion design was your first love. So Vidushi, are you a reluctant researcher?
Well, I'm not sure about the first love, but I feel like I had friend zone animation. On the other hand, research, I would say, was my first infatuation. So what I feel is like what keeps me going is the storytelling element, and that is what I love to do. I feel effective storytellers are researchers, formally or informally. Just take an example of stand-up comedians, right? They observe the world, create content, and then test their material relentlessly with the audience. What would you call them?
Food for thought. So Rupesh, user research is a relatively new term, a very fancy term. But how do you explain your new job, your new role to your parents?
Definitely, Jay. It's fairly new to India right now. So when I got this job as a user researcher, what I did was I reminded my mother of this incident where she was struggling with this new automatic washing machine because it had a lot of buttons and programs on it. So what I did back then was I translated all those labels and programs into Hindi language and had a brief explanation to it. So when I got this job here at Make My Trip, what I did was I just told them that I'll be basically doing the same thing, but for others and trying to help people.
Well, that's a good one. That's a good way to sort of explain for sure through examples, of course. Rupesh, it's been a little over a year since you've been with us. A very momentous year, of course, through the pandemic and all of that. But what's been some of your most challenging moments being a user researcher with the organization?
Definitely, Jay. I think apart from challenges, there has been learning curve as well. Uh, I think after the initial get to know challenges and setting up a fairly good rapport of the user research team, one thing that came out as a challenge and probably still is to some extent would be the feedback loop. So in an organization like Make My Trip, no product is actually one person's brainchild. So there's a lot of sweat and passion that goes behind every single product. So every time we get a research request from a team and we deliver the insights, it gets sort of difficult to get the feedback on what actions that were taken based on our given insights. So we are trying to set up a system here where like every stakeholders could come in, or even us, like we could approach them and get a sort of input on what actions was taken. So I think that was one of the challenge we faced initially, and I believe that becomes one of the crucial thing as a user researcher for me to communicate the insight in a very impactful manner. So for me, I think the key ingredients towards becoming a good research would be that it starts with one, having a good communication skill. Second would be listening. If you actually listen to form a bond. So this is something that I learned from Ripple, who actually set the foundation of research in Make My Trip. So I remember he told me after one of the sessions, he just said, just shut up and listen. I think that's something that got inculcated in my mind. So every time I go into an interview, it just keep on resonating. So I think that would be the second, and probably third, and probably the most crucial one would be have empathy. If you can't like feel for the users, so I think like that's basically half of your job, that you have to feel for your users. So yeah.
That's refreshing, Rupesh. I think the three things, of course, I love the fact about shut up and listen. I think I've heard this often from Ripple. But of course, how do you find the trail of what happened and how did your work impact a particular feature? Even a small thing, doesn't matter if it's a big or a small thing. And the third part is how do you ensure you inculcate the empathy? I mean, don't lose it. I mean, that's something that's given that we should do, but I think you have to remind yourself again and again. So Vidushi, working remotely is not new to you. You were the only member of the user research team, which was based out of Gurgaon. And I remember all of you getting on to a whole bunch of Zoom calls. So what's different now?
Yeah. So pre-pandemic, most of my days are like reaching my desk, logging in, and then being on Zoom call throughout the day. Although I was in Gurgaon physically, but it almost felt like I was in Bangalore mentally. The only moments when I realized I am in Gurgaon was when we had user sessions and people coming in the usability lab, and I had to manage logistics alone. In fact, even though the sessions happened in Gurgaon lab, it was still remote for rest of the team. Like either they were observing the session or taking notes remotely, or even sometimes moderating the sessions as well. I think all four of us are going to agree that the post-pandemic remote work transition was very smooth for us. So yeah, I kind of pretty much felt like we were made to evolve for the pandemic. Yeah. So with respect to the difference, I feel like since now all the sessions happen online, the screen time has significantly increased for us. We don't get to meet participants in person, and remote research in itself brings in a lot of challenges. Major one being the internet connectivity issues. There have been times when we had to do usability tests over phone call, like how they used to do in back 80s or 90s, where you don't know where the participant is looking, and we are just guiding with cues and trying to get their perception, understand where they're looking, what are they getting over the call. Yeah.
Fascinating. And of course, we will come back and talk more about this thing called ethnographic research and why in the remote scenario, it's very, very hard to sort of do something like that. But that's probably for later. Vidushi, you also joined a fresh new team, which we had started from scratch. So tell us how you saw it evolve from a perspective of a young first-time user researcher.
Yeah, I think we've come a long way from getting our first few project approvals to setting up our own labs in both Gurgaon and Bangalore. There were times when we were working on a research plan. I was in Gurgaon thinking about the scenarios for the UT, and these guys called me, and there was an awkward silence. And they didn't know how to tell that the research project itself got cancelled. So, as a young researcher, sometimes it gets a bit discouraging, but then you have a team to help you move ahead and realize that this is just part of it. Opportunity to work in a fresh new team also brought in other learnings. Like in your initial days, you need to be careful of how, when, and whom to include in your research sessions. For example, during one of our UT sessions, we had shared the Zoom ID with all the stakeholders to observe. After a couple of sessions, the product folks, based on the insights from just few sessions, changed the interface during the course of the study without realizing the effect it would have on the analysis. So in these cases, a small briefing actually helps a lot. The other thing was that you need to double check your participants for the study. I didn't observe this in other places that I went to, but I especially observed this happening here. Sometimes, because of incentives, people try to fake themselves, or agency itself sends in trained users. So, because we didn't have a proper recruitment setup back then, it was one of the few sessions that I was moderating, and I somehow figured that the user was giving in wrong details or faking the details. Now imagine the adulteration you would get in your research and the hours that you'll spend in planning and conducting the research. It's not it's easy to lose trust in those situations. However, we sailed through, and thanks to Yatin and Smriti that we have a fairly good recruitment setup now. The third thing is I learned how to evangelize UX research. For example, we started the newsletter to talk about the work we do. We made usability comics and videos about the work we do as well. We were also thinking of doing an annual creative showcase, more like a usability movie night for this thing as well.
Those are some very interesting ideas, Vidushi. As a matter of fact, what we'll do next is jump into one of the films the team made, pretty much to evangelize the user research, the user research practice, the process, and what we do. Very interestingly, the film also marked a very big turning point. Vidushi, maybe you want to say a little bit about that before we jump into the user research war stories.
Yeah, so this video captures the essence of a semi-ethnographic research project that we did on for our international flights research. During the entire research, a lot of unplanned things happened, like reaching late for the sessions due to Trump Yatra in Ahmedabad, and travel restrictions because of protests that were happening in Delhi when we were on field, and the COVID pandemic, we all know. So that was pretty much like a turning point when we were doing research, like how normal research is, and then we move to the new normal like everybody's shifting to. So we use this video to set the stage for our findings and more like empathize with UX research as we empathize with our users. So the inspiration for this video came from Steve Portical's work, Doorbells, Danger, and Dead Batteries, where he goes on around the world to collect war stories from researchers around the world. So I thought maybe why not have a video version of it? And there we are presenting to you Protest, Pandemic, and Passion.
So Rupesh, since that film in March 2020, we really haven't stepped out to meet users face to face. What has remote research taught you?
Definitely, Jay. I think as a user researcher, not meeting the user face to face somehow stings a bit. But like all of us here and the rest of the world, we are trying to make the best of what we have. And I think our ways of doing research and different methodologies are also adapting to that. And like Vidushi also mentioned few of the challenges that we have been facing in our remote research. I think there has been some learning curve as well. One of the learning that I personally had was you do not always have control over the environment the user is going to join in from. So earlier what used to happen was we used to call our user to our control lab setups where we had full control over how the research is going to turn out to be. But now it so happens that whenever a user is joining from their home, so we are not sure at till the last moment what environment or what kind of like noise or what kind of disturbance we might get. So as a moderator, it becomes very crucial for us to assess the situation right then and then plan accordingly so that we could deliver the objective as per plan. So I think that's one of the learning this has taught us. One of the other thing that I realized was because of all this, I think we have become more sensitive towards listening to the users and trying to grasp what emotion users are in just by listening to them. So I think, yeah, it did bring some challenges, but again, then there was sort of learning curve as well.
It's as if we need to develop new systems, sharpen our hearing, because so far we were relying way too much maybe on hearing and seeing them in real life. So moving on to Vidushi. Vidushi, I'm especially reluctant about mixing design and research. Bias tends to creep in when researching your own design or designing knowing that you're going to research a whole bunch of things. So the question to you, should researchers design?
Sure, Jay. I think I've been in that situation definitely where I've been torn between hands-on design and research. I think the first thing is that all the senior people in the industry have told me not to think about the solution or even analysis while conducting the sessions. However, you know how the human brain works, right? If you tell it to not do something, it will think about doing that thing. So practice that I follow is to let my thoughts out about anything that I'm thinking, either solution, ideas, conclusions, or maybe insights on paper while I'm in the session or before the session or after the session. So doing this tricks my brain into not thinking about that thought, and it gives an assurance that that thought has been recorded. I'll move ahead and find other interesting stuff. I feel like controlling your bias is the most challenging part of this job. So, if you're just starting out, I would highly recommend, and I have also done that in my initial days, to going back and watching your first few moderated sessions to identify where all you brought in your own biases.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, how do you tackle your bias? I think it's a lifelong learning that you need to sort of go through. So, moving to you, Rupesh, what are the three most useful pieces for a beginner from the Make My Trips UX research toolkit?
Sure, Jay. Although I'm still learning as a researcher every single day, uh, if I have to like sum it up, like my experience so far, I would probably put that down into three major points. First would be aware of various research methodology and your tools. So every research request like is different, and you can't keep like applying same methodology to like cater to the objectives. So it's probably good to have few skill set up your sleeves, and other than that, it doesn't become monotonous as well. Second probably would be establish your research panel, which is basically your user group, and have to figure out your internal recruitment method. So it so happens that when a research comes in, it like not always, it doesn't always have like a budget approved to it. So sometimes it happens that we get a very low budget or probably no cost budget. So what we do then is that we like tend to our internal recruitment and get the users from there and cater to the objective of the research. So probably that is one of the crucial part as a researcher I have learned so far. And the third point would be push for like a lab setup, because even though as a researcher it's your job to like understand user and figure out their emotions, but sometimes you do miss out on a lot of things. So it's good to have the aid of various tools. So do push for it if you're starting out, and get the research lab set up as soon as possible. So there are various tools and various devices such as eye tracking or like hand gesture devices. So you could look it up, and you could probably like start to like push within your management like to have the proper lab setup there. So yeah.
Excellent. With that, before we let them both go, we have some rapid fire questions for them both. Vidushi and Rupesh, you have to answer in less than 10 seconds. Your time starts now. So, Vidushi, what's one piece of advice or a timely warning you would give to a wannabe future user researcher?
I think everything is but a story.
Okay, moving to Rupesh, same thing question for you. A timely warning or a piece of advice for a future user researcher?
Like I said before, just shut up and listen.
Okay, Vidushi, which stand-up comedian would make a good user researcher?
Okay, Zakir Khan, definitely.
Okay, Rupesh, you're from the same state as Dhoni. What trait of the retired captain would be valuable for researchers?
I think understanding the field, he knows every player very well, what are their weaknesses and what are their strengths.
Okay, Vidushi, one snack you would take with you on a long user session?
Nariyal Pani, for sure. And my team knows it.
Okay, Rupesh, for you, one book that you would take on a long user research session. Of course, you can't read, but before or after?
I think probably it would be War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy.
Okay, now that brings me to the end of the first part. Vidushi, thank you. Rupesh, thank you so much. It's been great having you both with us. Joining me for the second part are Yatin Satwane, Senior Manager leading the Make My Trip and GoIbibo UX research team, and Smriti Bafna, Senior Researcher. Smriti also happens to be the voice of the Detour intro. Their recent research has taken them across to the Middle East. So welcome back from the Middle East, Smriti and Yatin. Are you both ready for this detour?
Yes, I'm ready.
Excellent. Smriti, starting with you, how was your recent Dubai research experience?
Oh, it's been great. We're trying to understand a very new culture from thousands of kilometers away. But in an ideal world, we'd actually be in Dubai and be in the user's environment, uh, understand the users in their own form. But obviously, we can't do that as of now. So the next best thing that we've done is to do it remotely. This is actually the first
such remote study of this magnitude for the team. So we definitely did have our challenges. But I think for me, it was interesting to see how the expats who are in UAE are actually imbibing two different cultures in a way. So being in UAE and also carrying their own culture from back home. And it's an interesting amalgamation to see as well. So yeah, it's been great. And now we're waiting to dive into the analysis.
So welcome back. Welcome back, as in the sense that, yeah, you were always here, very much in Bangalore studying Dubai. Yatin, talking about travel, when your research assignment takes you places, I believe you jazz it up with a touch of music. Tell us about this very interesting ritual.
Sure. Thank you, Jeff, first of all. So, and I guess we missed this in the Dubai research, sitting here in Bangalore. But every time I visit a new city or for research, I always ensure that I visit or attend a great gig. And I remember, I think 2 years ago when we were in San Francisco, I attended a very late night gig in downtown San Francisco. And by the time I was reaching back, it was almost time for catching my flight back to India. And it was cut it very tight at that time. So this has been always a great experience, enjoying different culture, at the same time enjoying my passion of music and travel.
Okay. So Yatin, shifting gears, why do we even need user research? Aren't data analytics, surveys, market studies enough?
So data we get from these sources, from market research and analytics, is always helpful, but it is not a complete data. So the data we get from them is what users are doing on our platform, or what are they clicking on, but we don't understand why they do those things. So to understand this is where we get into user research and trying to understand why users do what they do and understand their motivations, understand why they do these things. And this helps us together build better products.
Okay. So I think, yeah, if there was one takeaway from this, is one thing that we keep talking about a lot in the office. We know what people are doing. It's just one part of it. We don't know why they are doing it. And I think that's what keeps us coming back to user research, to understand, maybe peek inside their minds, inside their heads, to understand why did you do what you did. Smriti, we have had several discussions on the ROI of UX research. How does one measure the effectiveness of research? I mean, is there a secret formula to it, or how do we do it?
Interesting. Well, one way is definitely to keep a track of the research feedback and how it's being processed through the system, so to say. So what are the design changes that happen after that? And probably if we get the opportunity, even follow it up with another quick research to see how the experience of the users has evolved as well. But I think it's important to keep in mind when we're talking about user research, and which I definitely believe is that it cannot be just summed up in numbers or business KPIs, so to say. We definitely have to keep in mind that user research is much more than just numbers. So it's important to keep a track in the long term as to how the conversations are also evolving within the teams, or how the team's user perspective towards the users have changed. How well are they getting to know the users now? I think one incident which comes to mind right now is when one time an engineer was asking me more about a user story, and he was trying to understand that particular pain point better. And then he went back and he was sort of pushing his teammate to resolve a tech issue, because he finally understood that, how important it is for the users as well. So incidents like these also help one understand that, it's definitely making a strong impact, and we're getting the kind of slow but sure change that we are trying to achieve from research as well. I think another way that we've been assessing the ROI is by looking at the number of research asks that have been increasing month on month. people are not just coming over to pick our brains over, whatever they're working on or what task they're trying to solve, but they're also coming up with more and more research objectives and more research requirements, and not just for our usability tests, more for a range of research methods as well. And the good thing is that these are not just coming from designers; these are coming from all types of teams now. So that is definitely one way of assessing ROI as well.
No, that's fantastic, because one of the things I definitely see and have a visibility into is how so many teams, business teams, product teams, engineering teams, and of course, design teams are asking for more time, attention, and involvement of user research team way before and feature is kind of defined to right after its launch. So I think that definitely helps ramp up the conversation around users, and that's a great thing to watch. So that possibly is also a leading indicator of what value teams are actually seeing in research. So Yatin, you've been through a few challenges of kickstarting a design research team. What are the checkboxes you need to tick before we can get a user research team up and running?
Yeah, so I've been in, I think, last two organizations we've been part of setting up the research practice. So one of the first one and the major one, I think, is always the buy-in from the leadership about the value user research brings in. And I think here at Make My Trip, we always had leaders who, as you had mentioned ahead before, that they always talk about customers, they speak with customers, and they try to understand the needs. So that was a great start for me. So once that was there, moving is basically to get great researchers. So building a great team becomes the second part. Now we have been a good bunch of researchers has been there who have shown a great rigor for research and the curiosity a researcher should always have. So that's the second part. Moving to the third one is showing the value of research to the whole of the organization. So I think this one was done by doing one of the initial research, which was done to understand who are our next 100 million users. And the outcome of this was very surprising to the organization. And they saw who exactly these users are, and they were slightly different than what they were thinking, who we were expecting as users. So that brought in the insights that we got, showed the whole organization that the value user research is bringing in. Now that is getting a big picture. Now moving to the next challenge is then a day-to-day research and sharing these insights across different teams. So what we found out was different research for one product area, the insights are very valuable and useful to another product area. So we were wondering, how do we bring that insights to across these teams? So one of the ways we've been doing is a UX Insight newsletter, which goes across the organization. And as you mentioned, also different teams have started to come back to us to do more research. So that basically has together helped us evangelize our research findings. And now, as new research is coming, new requirements coming, new challenges are coming forth now.
That's interesting, Yatin. I think quite a few takeaways for people who are looking to kickstart a user research practice within their own organizations. Having said that, I think what we are talking about, I'm sure we have way more things to add to it, but this is just the tip of the iceberg that you see. There are many more things that we can share, and who knows, we could make a second or third part in this UX research episode. So do mention it in your comments if that's what you would like to do, like us to do, share more, talk more, get into more details. But moving on to my next question for Smriti. We started our user research projects mostly with UT and or usability testing, and of course, one big project which Yatin mentioned. But now the team is doing a huge variety of research types. I mean, could you share some of those, Smriti?
Of course. Like you said, we did start off with usability testing a lot, but I think over the past year, we have been able to expand and do a variety of projects, starting off with a lot of in-depth researches as well. So these were actually done way before the design process even starts. So these are basically to understand the user's motivations, or what they actually do, or why do they do what they do, right? So these studies were more to give a more long-term direction to the product, and not just evaluate the design on the basis of what we think is right. I think some of the most recent examples would be the Dubai research that we spoke about. And another one, which Yatin also mentioned initially, was the next 100 million user study, which was basically done to find out who the right users are for us, and what are these users like. So this is definitely one part of the user researches that we have been doing. Another would be to really understand a part of user need in more detail, right? So let's say if we want to understand what information do the users look for at this point of their travel booking. So we've been able to do a lot of these kinds of studies as well, where we did some interesting exercises like card sorting, or assign the rupee value, where basically we're asking the users to assign a particular value to a feature or a piece of information. And that is helping us understand more specifically about what do they really look for, right? So that is much better rather than us blindly giving out information which we think is right, or maybe even worse, spilling all the information that we have onto the screen, and leaving the users to treasure hunt for themselves. So that is definitely one aspect that we've also expanded into. And we're also following a couple of our initial studies with more detailed usability tests later, right? So it's safe to say that we're actually aligned across the product life cycle now, and not just focusing on a later stage when the design is pretty much set and it's harder to make the bigger changes that we're looking for. So yes, we've definitely expanded into a much more wider range of projects over time.
Talking of expansion, scaling user research is something which most organizations will have on their minds. Yatin, could you share some of the most effective ways in which you could scale up user research?
So yes, so more than a year here with the research team started, and now we're seeing a lot of requests which we're starting to turn down. And this is basically the best time to scale up the research team. So one way is obviously expand the team, get more researchers, assign each researcher to each product areas, and do the expansion starting with that. But that's just one way. So next way could be to start make efficient processes. So one of the most time taking and that take for any research is getting users and getting the right users. So how do we reduce the time and effort that we're doing that? One of the solution is building up user panels. Now, user panels are a group of users, a diverse set of users you started to recruit and have them ready for any research on a short notice. So basically that helps us reduce the time we do it. Another way to improve the efficiency is having the right tools. That could be having a right tool to conduct the research, analyze the research, and then share the research. So these are few softwares that can come in, or certain hardwares that can help us do that. So those are the second way of reducing and scaling up the research efforts that we do. The third one is basically as the maturity, the UX maturity of the organization increases, and where you're starting to see the different team members, the designers, the product managers, and the developers who participate in research more and more, and starting to see how research is being done, that time is a good time to start including them as a part of the research team, an extended research team, if you call, and where you can start mentoring them, training them to do a quick research that you can basically democratize research practice. So this is another third way, I can guess, to scale research. So these, I think, three ways can help you scale research quite a bit in your organization.
Following on from that, Yatin, the other questions organizations typically ask is the number of users required in a study, or in industry parlance, sample size. A feature, for example, may be used by 500,000 people, but we typically will speak to maybe 25 or 36 or 47 users. Tell us a little bit more about that. Why do we do that?
Yeah, so let me call out at the outset that if a feature is being used by 500,000 users, we're not going to get a sample size which is statistically significant to get to test out with those users. That's not even feasible. The feasibility is very high, low there. So we consider more of user sample size from a perspective of who are the right users for the feature we're testing. So who are the core group of users, who are the potential users we're going to be testing with. So that brings us a clear idea of how many users we want to use. So this will differ from different user research techniques. So let me give an example from, let's say, a basic usability testing. Pretty common day-to-day, one of the basic research technique we use regularly here at Make My Trip. And we see that about 7 to 10 users of a certain user group which you're targeting helps you find out about 90 to 95% of the usability issues. So it's the you're looking from a different perspective. How much and who are the users you want to find the issues for, and that can help you figure out the right sample size. Now this you can build up then having the different user groups, how they crisscross. So this is where it gets a bit complicated, and the numbers then, as you said, 23 and 41 start coming up in the picture. And this we've seen, I think, from number of research since last 15 years I've been doing, and the industry also has done a lot of these statistically significant findings, is you start to see the different trends or the patterns the users are facing the same issue. And after 6 or 7 users, you're pretty much clear that the main issue is this, these are the minor issues, and you can even uncover some of the edge cases with the last set of 3 to 4 users. That's where you'll get majority of your usability issues.
Thanks, Yatin. That's interesting. And this is one of the questions that I always get asked. I'm sure you do as well.
Yes.
Moving to Smriti, sharing user feedback isn't easy. It can sometimes be brutal or emotional for people who have worked very hard on a feature or a project. So what's the secret sauce? How do you share the bad news?
It can definitely receive a lot of pushback from the audience. But I think what I do is I treat my audience as my users as well. So basically how a user would be consuming a product, my audience is consuming my research report. Right. So keeping that in mind, it's important to understand where that pushback is coming from. Right. So they might have their own biases, or they might have their own past experiences as well, which is causing them to not be able to accept that feedback in the way that we thought they would. It's important to empathize with the audience at this point and to actually help them get past that mental block of theirs. It's actually the researcher's job to help the audience get past that mental block, and not the other way around. It's not their job to receive feedback here. So it's important to keep a track of the conversation that is happening and to ensure that the conversation stays on the right track, right? So the purpose is not to get a bunch of people in a room and point fingers out and say that, you didn't do your job right, hence this is not working. No, that is not what we want to do. We want the audience to understand the reasons behind why a feature or a design is not working, and then to be able to go ahead and do the work again, let's say. So it's important to do that, and for that I think a couple of things can be done. One is that you bring the field into the room. Right, so there are a couple of ways that we do that here at MMT as well. Bring as many user stories as you can. Bring in images, video clippings, artifacts from your researches, especially from your field studies. It's very important for the audience to also feel the users themselves. And since they cannot always accompany on the field, or they cannot really experience that firsthand, like we researchers do, it's important for us to bring that emotion and that environment within the room itself. So it's important to have those stories in place and to properly communicate those emotions across as a part of the report itself. Second thing that is also very helpful is to take the team along with you through the entire process, I'll say. So, setting out the research objectives together, having the team as active observers during the sessions, that is also very helpful. Or, having them in during the analysis of the data as well. So through this entire process, it will become easier for the audience to actually get over their mental blocks or their own biases. And it'll be easier for them to transition into the feedback, rather than having everybody in a room and one person standing there and telling the person that, no, it doesn't work. It feels more attacking in that way, I feel. So it's important to have them be a part of the process rather than be just end receivers of it.
Yeah, talking about stories and sharing stories, I think we could probably go on, and I have about a dozen more questions for both sets of user researchers, and obviously a whole bunch of threads from each of these answers. But keeping in mind the timings, I think we will probably let Yatin and Smriti go. But before they go, I think we have a 3-2-1 format of rapid fire questions for them. So Smriti, Yatin, are you ready?
Yes.
So Yatin, 3 things that you look for in a user researcher.
Someone who's a constant learner, a very good listener, and a great communicator.
Okay. Smriti, top 3 references or books for user researchers.
First would be Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman, definitely for researchers as well, not just for designers. Second is a Field Study Handbook by Giant Chipchase. You don't need to read any other field study book after this. And third would be, it's a website, it's called UXR Collective. So they have some great stories and tips for researchers and from researchers across the globe.
Fantastic. Moving on, Smriti, 2 of your cheat foods.
Pani puri and chocolate donuts.
Okay, Yatin, 2 of your favorite composers.
Oh, well, yes, Miles Davis and our great A.R. Rahman.
Okay, Smriti, 1 place you would teleport yourself to right now if you could.
I'll go to the beaches of Bali. That was my last trip before the pandemic, and I can't travel now. So.
Fingers crossed, hopefully we can travel soon, very soon, and travel safe. Thank you, Yatin. Thanks, Smriti. It was great having you both with us.
Thanks, Jay. It was great being here and talking to you.
Thanks, Jay, for a good detour, much needed one.
So there you have it. That's how we at Make My Trip and GoIBO went from the idea of UT to building a full-fledged UX research team. Today you heard from our 2 new joinees, Vidushi and Rupesh, who are just starting their UX research practice. And then you heard the war stories from the veterans, Smriti and Yatin, who have seen their fair share of users and their experiences. So if you are looking to set up a UX research team, here's a quick short cheat guide. Step 1, to get a buy-in, speak in the language of the management. Step 2, define your toolkit. Figure out ROI, evangelize, show impact by showcasing how insights have shaped ideas and broadened the conversation around users, the ones that we have and the ones which we don't. And step number 3, find ways to scale research. Create a mindset of people willing to engage with users without influencing them. Remember, makers, which includes designers, product managers, engineers, can unknowingly bias user research outcomes. So objectivity is key. Listening is important. As we heard again and again, shut up and listen. That's all we have on this episode of The Detour. In our next episode, we go off-road into one of our best kept secrets, a paradox called design system. Join me for another journey in the next detour. This is Jay Datta signing out. A big shout out to the team behind the scenes who keeps Detour on track. Dilpreet, our video editor, Digjot and Bhavna, the exec producers, Smriti, UK Karan and Shiva, our sound and voiceover team, Abhinav, Nitesh, Manoj and Akash for everything from logo to logistics, and an extra special thanks to Sanjay Mohan and Suresh Venkat for their support. And thank you for watching.
So don't forget to like,
Share.
Subscribe.
And press the bell icon.
Thank
Thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching.